The paradigm of pre-training and fine-tuning has been successful in various domains, but when dealing with abundant auxiliary tasks having complex relationships to the target task, using domain knowledge or searching over all possible pre-training setups is inefficient and suboptimal. To address this challenge, a method is proposed to automatically select from a large set of auxiliary tasks to yield a representation most useful to the target task. In the context of clinical outcome prediction in electronic medical records, pre-training involves learning a compact representation on related tasks with abundant data, which can then be fine-tuned on the primary task with limited labels. However, naively pre-training across all measurements can lead to a representation oblivious of the target clinical prediction task. With complex relationships between measurement trajectories and the primary outcome, the decision of how to structure pre-training is not straightforward. The proposed approach introduces a connection between multitask learning and transfer learning within the framework of meta-learning, where each auxiliary task is a self-supervised trajectory forecast for a specific clinical measurement. A gradient-based algorithm is developed to automatically select the most relevant auxiliary tasks for pre-training, optimizing the meta-objective of generalizing to the target task. The primary supervised task involves clinical outcome prediction, where a model predicts the most likely label value for a given input sequence. Auxiliary tasks involve trajectory forecast, modeling the distribution of future values of raw EMR data elements. Pre-training with self-supervised trajectory forecast tasks can produce useful patient representations, but when the set of auxiliary tasks is large, joint pre-training or successive pre-training can be suboptimal and inefficient. To address this, the problem of learning to select the most relevant trajectory forecast tasks is formulated, requiring exploration of 2F combinations. To make the search space continuous, the problem is relaxed, and a model is designed to learn the optimal subset of auxiliary tasks. The proposed algorithm is evaluated on real-world clinical datasets, demonstrating favorable predictive performance compared to direct supervised learning, naive pre-training, and simple multitask learning, especially in low data regimes. The learned representation from the selected auxiliary tasks leads to improved performance, and detailed ablation analysis demonstrates that the selected tasks are meaningful and able to generalize to unseen target tasks. The proposed approach provides a promising way to learn a useful patient representation and improve clinical outcome prediction in electronic medical records. This research paper proposes a nested loop metalearning approach for guiding pre-training by supervised learning on a primary outcome. The approach involves a bilevel optimization process, where the inner loop performs self-supervised learning on trajectory forecast tasks, and the outer loop optimizes the task weights using a meta-objective function that measures the utility of the learned representation. The inner loop uses a sequence-to-sequence architecture for trajectory prediction, where an encoder and decoder are trained to predict future values in a multivariate time series. The self-supervised loss function is defined as the mean squared error between the predicted and actual values. The outer loop, on the other hand, uses a supervised learning objective, such as cross-entropy loss, to train a classifier for outcome prediction. The task selection problem is formulated as an optimization problem, where the goal is to minimize the validation loss of the target task by optimizing the task weights. The optimization process involves alternating between the inner and outer loops, where the inner loop updates the encoder and decoder parameters, and the outer loop updates the task weights using the meta-objective function. The paper also derives the Lagrangian of the optimization problem, which involves explicit optimization constraints. The derivatives of the Lagrangian with respect to the encoder and decoder parameters are computed using the chain rule, and the optimal conditions are obtained by setting each derivative to 0. The key insights from the optimization process are that the meta-objective function backpropagates the signal from the supervised learning process to the self-supervised learning stage, and the knowledge transfer from the supervised learning process to the self-supervised learning stage is facilitated through the encoder parameter. The decoder parameter, on the other hand, is only involved in the self-supervised learning stage and does not affect the optimization of the task weights. Overall, this approach enables the learning of task weights that optimize the performance of the target task, while also leveraging the benefits of self-supervised learning for representation learning. The proposed method has potential applications in healthcare and other domains where multivariate time series data is common. The proposed algorithm, auto-select, is a first-order automatic task selection method that combines self-supervised learning and supervised learning to improve predictive performance. Algorithm 1 outlines the procedure, which involves randomly initializing parameters, followed by a self-supervised learning loop and a supervised learning loop. The algorithm computes the hypergradient using equation 13, which is an efficient first-order approximation to equation 8. The efficient gradient-based learning algorithm is motivated by related techniques and proposes a first-order approximation to equation 8. The approximation treats the gradients of the supervised learning task as constants and applies the chain rule to obtain the hypergradient. The overall algorithm is given in algorithm 1. The authors evaluate auto-select using the MIMICII dataset, which contains over 38,000 adult patients admitted to the intensive care unit. The dataset is preprocessed by normalizing the values using z-scores and imputing missing values by carrying forward the last observation. The authors defined 3 primary supervised learning tasks: mortality, low blood pressure, and kidney dysfunction. The experimental setup uses a sequence-to-sequence architecture with an LSTM encoder and decoder for the trajectory forecast task, and a one-layer MLP classification head for the primary clinical outcome prediction task. The authors compare auto-select to several baselines, including supervised learning, pretraining, and co-training via multitask learning. The results in Table 2 show that auto-select outperforms the baselines in the low-resource regime, where only 1% or 10% of the training data is used. The performance of all methods improves as more training data is added. The authors also observe that the pre-training approach has better performance than naive supervised learning, but the co-training baseline has difficulty balancing the self-supervised trajectory forecasts and the supervised outcome prediction task. The experimental setup uses 10-fold cross-validation, and the standard error of the mean is reported. The learning rates are tuned, and the hyperparameter tuning process is reported in the appendix. The authors conclude that auto-select is a promising approach for improving predictive performance in the low-resource regime. The authors propose auto-select, a metalearning framework that adaptively selects and weights auxiliary tasks for self-supervised pre-training to improve the performance of a target supervised task. The framework is evaluated on 3 clinical outcome prediction tasks: mortality, kidney dysfunction, and low blood pressure. The results in Table 3 show that auto-select outperforms various baselines, including pre-training on all tasks, top tasks only, and random task selection. An ablation study is conducted to examine the quality of the selected tasks and their impact on the target task. The results indicate that the top selected tasks capture the most useful information for the target task, while the remaining tasks provide weaker signals. The authors also analyze the learning dynamics of auto-select, showing that the performance of the target task improves significantly during the fine-tuning stage. The authors investigate the generalization capabilities of auto-select by using the learned weights of the auxiliary tasks to predict unseen new tasks. The results in Table 4 demonstrate that the learned weights can generalize well to new tasks, even when the primary task is more general than the new tasks. The authors discuss related work in multitask learning, metalearning, and patient representation learning. They highlight the novelty of their approach, which automatically selects a set of auxiliary tasks that can lead to a better representation for a target supervised learning task. The figures provide additional insights into the learning process of auto-select. Figure 2a shows the training dynamics of auto-select for the mortality task, demonstrating the improvement in performance during the pre-training and fine-tuning stages. Figure 2b illustrates the learned weights of the auxiliary tasks for mortality prediction, revealing a mixture of clinically sensible correlates for mortality. Figure 2c examines the robustness of auto-select to different metalearning configurations, showing that the method is generally robust across different settings. The paper presents a novel approach to patient representation learning using electronic health records, EHR, data. It focuses on developing an algorithm for automatic task selection and primary task training within a nested-loop metalearning process. This method is demonstrated on a real clinical dataset, showing superior predictive performance, particularly in low data scenarios where the primary task has few examples. The broader impact of this work lies in its potential to efficiently learn patient representations from EHR data, which could be applied to various predictive modeling tasks using different types of longitudinal health data. This could significantly benefit low data scenarios, such as clinical use cases where labeling is challenging or where there are few eligible patients in the EHR. The code for this method will be made available to the research community on GitHub. However, ethical considerations associated with EHR modeling must be addressed, including issues like bias in observational data based on gender, ethnicity, or socioeconomic status, which can propagate into predictive models. Fairness considerations also apply to representation learning architectures as presented here. The paper also discusses the importance of semi-supervised sequence learning, attentive state space modeling of disease progression, and deep physiological state space models for clinical forecasting. These concepts are crucial for understanding the complexities of patient health data and predicting outcomes accurately. The research highlights the potential of deep learning models in improving healthcare outcomes, especially in intensive care units. It emphasizes the need for further development and validation of such models to ensure their safety and efficacy before deployment in real-world clinical settings. Here is a combined summary of pages 13 and 14. The full algorithm for automatic task selection is presented in Algorithm 2, which combines self-supervised and supervised learning loops. The algorithm initializes the parameters θ-e, θ-d, θ-c, and lambda, and then iterates through the self-supervised learning loop, where the gradients of lambda are computed using equations 14 and 15. The supervised learning loop follows, where the parameters are updated using gradient descent. The hypergradient is computed, and the multiplier alpha is updated. Finally, the hypergradient descent is performed to update lambda. The algorithm is evaluated using the MIMICII dataset, which contains 38,485 adult inpatient encounters. The dataset is pre-processed by harmonizing medical codes, converting units, removing outliers, normalizing values, and bucketing time steps. The features are selected by considering the 96 most frequently occurring lab measurements, vital signs, and interventions, equipment settings. The task definitions and statistics are presented in Table 5, which includes the number of positive, negative, and excluded encounters for each task. The tasks are triggered 48 hours after ICU admission, and the prediction window is 4,896 hours post-admission. The hyperparameter selection is presented in Table 6, which includes the learning rates for supervised and self-supervised learning, as well as the state size for the LSTM model. The hyperparameters are selected based on validation metrics, such as AUC and MSE. Overall, the proposed algorithm combines self-supervised and supervised learning to select tasks automatically, and it is evaluated using a real-world dataset with a thorough data preprocessing step. The hyperparameter selection is performed using a grid search with validation metrics. In the context of a comprehensive study on predicting patient outcomes in critical care settings, the paper presents an evaluation of different machine learning models' performance under varying levels of data scarcity. The research focuses on 4 primary tasks: mortality, shock, kidney failure, and liver failure predictions. To address the challenge of limited data availability, the authors propose a novel method called auto-select, which leverages auxiliary tasks related to physiological time series data to improve predictive performance in low data scenarios. The proposed approach is compared against 2 baseline methods, pretrain, AL, and cotrain using 2 evaluation metrics, OCROC and AUCPR. The results from Tables 7 and 8 demonstrate that auto-select consistently outperforms the baseline methods in all 4 tasks, especially in low data scenarios. This suggests that incorporating relevant auxiliary tasks can significantly enhance predictive capabilities when data is scarce. Moreover, Table 9 highlights the top features associated with each primary task, providing insight into the most relevant physiological parameters for predicting patient outcomes. These findings underscore the importance of considering multiple physiological signals in critical care prediction tasks. In conclusion, this research contributes to the development of more accurate predictive models for critical care settings by leveraging auxiliary tasks and physiological time series data. The proposed auto-select method shows promising results, particularly in situations where data availability is limited. Further exploration of this approach could lead to improvements in patient care and resource allocation in intensive care units. This table outlines a comprehensive list of input features used in the model, encompassing various physiological parameters and laboratory test results. The features include blood pressure measurements, cardiac output rates, glucose levels, and other vital signs that are crucial for patient monitoring and predictive modeling. These parameters are sourced from MIMIC, a critical care database, and are categorized by their units of measurement, such as mmHg for blood pressure, BPM for heart rate, and MEQ_per_L for ionized calcium. The table also includes counts for each feature, indicating the number of instances in the dataset. This dataset is essential for developing predictive models that can accurately forecast patient outcomes and aid in clinical decision-making. Here is a combined summary of pages 19 and 20. The tables presented on these pages list the input features used in the model, comprising 40 distinct features. Each feature is represented by a harmonized name, display name, MIMIC code, LOINC code, units, and count. The features encompass a range of physiological and laboratory parameters, including oxygen saturation, blood gases, respiratory rate, blood pressure, and laboratory test results such as electrolyte levels, complete blood counts, and renal function tests. The input features are categorized into several groups, including respiratory parameters, e.g., O2 saturation, respiratory rate, and plateau pressure, cardiovascular parameters, e.g., blood pressure, heart rate, and cardiac output, laboratory test results, e.g., electrolyte levels, complete blood counts, and renal function tests, and other physiological parameters, e.g., temperature, pH, and phosphorus levels. The units of measurement for each feature are specified, including percentage, millimeters of mercury, mmHg, milliliters per liter, milliliter per liter, and milliequivalents per liter, MEQ, L, among others. The count column indicates the number of instances for each feature in the dataset. Notably, the features listed on these pages are essential for characterizing the patient's physiological state and informing clinical decision-making. The inclusion of these features in the model enables the development of a comprehensive and accurate prediction framework. Wipe buzz. It. Class, of 0.3 less than. Ugas cheeky smiley face, 0%, P2, and Ukunter, 765, 9, less than. 0. BO, TOG, less than, or IDA less than. T, greater than 1 less than, T. B, 067, N, buzz. Percent, of less than 90. 9, cut. Got the to give to, no, to cause the page less than, T.